Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the show. This is Reservations, and I'm Raine. And Jeremy's not with me today. If you listened to last week, which, to be honest, we know you didn't. But if you did listen to last week, Jeremy is going to be out for a little bit. He and his wife Haley just had a baby. Well, I should say Haley had the baby. Jeremy was just there. But he's going to take some time off to be a dad. I mean, obviously. He is going to be back, though. He's going to take maybe about 2 weeks off. Maybe longer. We don't know yet, but for sure, maybe about 2 weeks. And then he'll be back in, and we'll get back into the normal flow of the show. But until that time, we decided to not keep the show idle. And I said that I would do some solo episodes, just, maybe just to shake things up, try something new, or, just talk, I guess. After all, that's the point of the podcast. So I really was racking my brain with what I was going to do with this first episode. I was thinking about maybe discussing physical media, why Jeremy and I think it's so important, why we collect it. But I'm in my living room today, so I was like, then what can I do? And I ultimately decided on doing really something that we've never really done on the show before, and that is a review. We analyze film, and yes, we say if we like it or if we don't like it, but we've never actually done a review necessarily of a film. So I decided that that's what I'll do, that I'll actually review a film that I've seen recently and give you my thoughts, my opinions, maybe make some comparisons, sort of, I guess, a toned down version of the show with Jeremy, but actually reviewing the movie, and ultimately I'll give it a rating at the end. I guess, I don't know, I'm kind of making this up as I go, so that's really up to future Raine in the edit. So today I decided to go with a movie I've just most recently seen in theaters, and that is the 2024 remake of The Crow. I mentioned it on last week's episode that Ashley and I went and saw it, and I gave my kind of 30-second elevator pitch about it. It's fine, all in all. I'm going to get that out now. It's fine. I think the reviews are a little harsh, but let's get into it. So, but before I get into it, if you haven't seen the film yet, I'm going to spoil it. So if you are planning on seeing it, then I would suggest go watch it first and then come back and see if you want my opinions. But let's get into it. So, the 2024 version of The Crow, they kind of kept a lot of things the same from the 94 version and even the comic. I'm not really going to talk much about the comic just because I've never read the comic, but I have seen the 94 version many times. And of course, we did an episode on it. And if you want to check it out, I'll be sure that Future Raine credits it in the description of the audio and, of course, on the YouTube channel. I apologize if anyone hears that barking. It's probably Otis. That's Otis. Anyway, so The Crow. Where this new movie kind of... Let me start with, I guess, the plot of the movie. So the movie takes place in somewhere. They don't really specify the location. The movie was filmed in the Czech Republic. So it does kind of give it this otherworldly feel to it, because you can't really place where the movie's taking place. But we meet Shelley first. And if anyone has actually seen the 94 version, we kind of don't meet Eric and Shelley until about 15 minutes into the movie. But we meet Shelly first, and she has evidence against a guy named Rogue, Danny Houston's character. Someone filmed the video, a video of something that's going down, and that can incriminate him, but also he's really powerful, and he wants this video. And so Shelly gets herself arrested and gets herself thrown into a rehab / mental institution where she meets Eric, played by Bill Skarsgård. I should mention Shelly in this film is played by FKA Twigs. And they kind of seem to sort of hit it off. She likes how quiet and I guess kind of quirky he is. I wouldn't call him quirky. I guess mysterious. And he likes that she kind of sees him for him, I guess. They escape the mental institution together because the people looking for Shelly track her down there. And they escape, and almost immediately they fall in love. There's no real build-up. There's no real sitting with this. They pretty much are soulmates within 5 minutes. And then, of course, Shelly gets word that they've tracked her down, and so she and Eric decide to leave. But, of course, if anyone has seen the 94 version, they don't get to leave. They ultimately get killed, where Eric then wakes up in some sort of, I guess, purgatory, and he meets a character, and this is kind of a change from the 94 version. He meets a character, let me see, I'm pulling it up, simply called Kronos, which is interesting, but okay. And Kronos tells him that he can set the wrong things right, which of course is also something that they say in the 94 version. And so Eric suddenly is revived, but he doesn't really know what's going on, where then he gets into a fight with a cop. The cop almost kills him pretty brutally. I mean, he gets cut across the midsection. But Eric starts to notice that, I'm not dying. That's weird. Until he's, I think, if I remember correctly, I think he's shot, and it brings him back to Kronos, and Kronos kind of explains a little bit more like, hey, like, you have an opportunity here to avenge you and your love, and ultimately save her, because I guess Danny Houston's character, it's implied that he made a deal with the devil, and it's throwing things out of balance. Very, very weird stuff. So Eric ultimately starts to track down the people that killed him and Shelly. And I will say, this is something I like, is that he struggles. You know, he's not a killer. He doesn't really know what exactly he's doing, which is kind of a departure from the 94 version, considering once Eric in the 94 Crow is revived, he is a badass almost immediately. So I did like seeing that Eric is having a hard time, being intimidating, and when he shoots someone for the first time, there's like a ringing in his ears, and because he shot someone in a car, and so he, he's not used to hearing that. So I like that. Anyway, well, he ultimately finds out that they never got that video. And so he's kind of teased about like, well, have you even seen the video? Like, do you even know what's on it? And he sees the video and it freaks him out. So pressing pause from the plot real quick. This was something that me and my wife Ashley had a hard time with, which was that Danny Houston's character also has supernatural powers, that he can apparently hypnotize or manipulate. He, using like some demonic voice, he can convince people to do things. So on the video, he convinces Shelley to kill someone in front of like all these people. Anyway, so that freaks Eric out because he can't believe that she would do that. And so when he gets shot again, he's not healing. And he visits Kronos again, and Kronos is like, which I thought was weird. He was like, I told you your love had to be pure. And so Eric makes a deal that, let me go back. I'll be sure I finish this, but you can exchange my life for Shelley's life. And so Kronos accepts, gives Eric, I guess, even a little bit more power, because Bill Skarsgård, the whole movie, has been just sort of lanky, his normal self. But when he is revived this time, he's a lot more jacked and beefed up. But yeah, this essentially goes, he just absolutely murders all these people, tracks down Danny Houston's character, and manages to kill him. And then yeah, and then he saves Shelley, but he tells her like, hey, I made a deal, you get to go and live your life, I'm gonna be stuck here. And so, and then it's implied that maybe Eric is gonna come back. I read that they changed the ending to set up a potential sequel, but anyway, that's The Crow. So I've already kind of expressed some of the things I didn't like again, with Danny Houston having supernatural powers as well. I don't think that was necessary, because in the 94 version, Top Dollar, played by Michael Wincott. Top Dollar is a pretty menacing villain, even without supernatural powers. Besides the fact that his name is Top Dollar. But he kind of gets shit done when he needs to. He doesn't have to rely on supernatural powers. If he wants to get his hands dirty, he'll get his hands dirty. If he wants someone else to do it, he'll get someone else to do it. So, like, Danny Houston's a great actor, and I think he is very menacing and very scary. But I think they could have added more to his character if they just let Danny Houston really be a villain rather than kind of a generic superhero villain, Secondly, the actual relationship between Shelley and Eric in this film is a little bit, I didn't really like it as much. I was even talking to Ashley about it, that I felt like it was very codependent. And what I mean by that, and there's nothing wrong with codependency or anything like that, but what I mean by that is their whole personalities is the other person. Like, Eric says a line that, they're doing the whole story beat of Shelley being like, oh, you should get away from me, and stuff like that. And Eric tells her that without her, he'd probably die, and it's just, I'm like, man, like, you can love someone so much that it hurts, and you don't want to be away from that person, but I don't know. Like, that seems, again, too codependent in my opinion. And Ashley agreed, but she also said, but they did meet in a mental institution. I was like, yeah, that's that too. And more with their relationship, the film spends a lot of time, especially in the first act, letting us know that they're in love, that they're soulmates. And honestly, I didn't really care. Just because the 94 version did such a great job conveying Eric and Shelley's love for one another through flashbacks, as little as there were, through Eric's motivations. So, like, through Brandon Lee's going through everyone, especially in one of my favorite scenes when he is intimidating Mr. Gideon for Shelley's ring being pawned and stuff like that. So we didn't spend a whole lot of time with Eric and Shelley as a couple, but we kind of knew they were soulmates, they were in love, and so I just feel like the 2024 version just spent too much time on that. Now it could be me being just a little biased because when Ashley and I were seeing the film, I leaned over to her and I said, I really don't like FKA Twigg's voice. I didn't think she was a bad actor. I don't know, just her voice was too high pitched. So maybe that's why I didn't like their relationship. But okay. Now I do want to mention Bill Skarsgård was great. Now, of course, we would want the actor playing Eric, playing our crow, to be great. But there was something about Brandon Lee's take on the character that I think was a little bit more compelling. Now, I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about the 94 Brandon Lee's performance in the 94 version. Again, if you want to hear me talk more about that, listen to our episode that we did on it. But Brandon Lee was fantastic, and his take on the character was much more. Granted, it was much more of the time, 94, goth culture, punk culture, because his character literally is, I believe he's the lead singer of a punk band, but his version, again, was much more compelling, and you had really a clear motivations with his version of Eric and the Crow. And the other thing too, because I rewatched the 94 Crow in preparation for this, his Eric is a little bit more, I don't want to say goofy, but there are moments where he is a little goofy, like when Gideon is telling him about T-Bird and his little gang. Eric is like, I'm gonna find them all, the whole jolly gang with their fucking pirate jolly names, and then after he kills the final guy, Skank, in Top Dollar's compound, the police raid it and they tell him to put his hands up and don't move, and so he does, and then he kind of skips away. So his Crow was a little bit more goofy, a little bit more silly, especially with all his interactions with Ernie Hudson's character. Like when Ernie Hudson tells him to, don't move, and he says, "I thought the cop said freeze," just giving him a hard time. Bill's version is definitely much more serious. Now, granted, they were wanting, I'm sure, to take this version of the character a little bit more seriously. So he's not as silly, not as funny. But there's nothing wrong with that necessarily, because again, I thought Bill was great. Bill definitely, he wasn't trying to emulate Brandon Lee's performance or Brandon Lee's version of the character at all, but he was trying to make it his own. But again, there's something to be said about Brandon Lee's version. Now, like I mentioned last week when I was telling Jeremy about it, there was an Honest Trailers posted, and maybe I'll put that link up here or something. And they mentioned that the one thing that movie has going for it is vibes. And I would agree with that. The vibes of the 94 Crow are stick sauce. So good. And the vibes of the 2024 version are okay. Now, some of the things I did like. I liked how brutal the movie was, because, of course, the 94 version was limited. CGI was still in its infancy. I mean, there are some digital composite shots in the movie. Of course, as everyone knows, Brandon Lee died on set while they were filming, and to finish a lot of his scenes, they had a stunt double in those scenes, and they digitally added Brandon's face over his. And it holds up pretty well because they did a really good job of making sure they only used it really in shadows and things like that. But the 2024 version, of course, with CGI being what it is now, I liked that they could kind of go a little bit more extreme. Like, I mentioned this last week with Jeremy, that there's a scene in the big fight sequence when Eric is just going to town on everyone, just killing people left and right. He's using a samurai sword, and he sticks it in a guy's mouth and breaks his jaw. It actually made Ashley and I kind of cringe a little bit. But, I was like, let's, if you could come back to life and get revenge on the people that you'd want to get revenge on, you're probably not going to pull your punches. So I enjoyed how brutal it was, because the killing in the 94 version, again, it was limited for its time. But also, Eric was definitely trying to make, I guess, each kill a little bit more personal. Like Tintin, the first guy he kills, Tintin's got a thing for knives. Well, Eric uses all his knives to kill him. Fun Boy, who he kills next, he essentially overdoses him and sticks him full of needles. T-Bird, he explodes, and then Skank, he just throws out of a window. So it's not really brutal. I guess the most brutal death in the film is Top Dollar, because he gets dropped onto a gargoyle. But I enjoyed the movie. Now, I'm not saying I condone violence or anything like that, but for a movie about a guy getting revenge, you want it to be brutal, and I will say that the 2024 version was definitely that. Sorry, everyone. My watch is just going off. Anyway, with that being said, another thing I didn't like was the soundtrack. So now, again, like I mentioned, the 94 version, definitely a product of 1994. But the soundtrack is just baller. Like The Cure, I think Smashing Pumpkins are on there. Hang on, let's see. Let's look this up together. We're learning together in a safe space. The Cure, Stone Temple Pilots, Nine Inch Nails, Rage Against the Machine, Pantera. So many great 90s bands. And the 2024 version just kind of went with generic, dance, electronic music. And again, I get it. It's the 2020s, that's kind of all the rage now is, trap music and stuff like that. But I don't know. I felt like maybe they could have gone a little bit more with the goth punk aesthetic. But again, I understand. They're also kind of catering to Gen Z and wanting Gen Z to come see this movie. But I mean, what am I going to do? I'm just a guy on the internet complaining. So ultimately, I didn't hate the movie. I was getting kind of worried. I don't let reviews sway me. I think I've mentioned that on the show before. If it's a movie I'm really excited about, I won't look at reviews. I won't look at anything. I might look at the Rotten Tomatoes score to see what critics may think about it. Like Dune Part 2. Ashley and I didn't see that until after the release. So I wanted to make sure that, hey, I hope I'm not going to waste 2.5 hours of my time here. But I didn't read reviews. But with this one, I did read reviews, and I was getting kind of scared. I was even discussing it with Jeremy, and Jeremy even said, everything he read, that they turned it into a generic superhero movie. And I was just like, oh, man. And I did mention that to Ashley. I was like, hey, look, I still want to see it, but, I am kind of worried that maybe we're not going to enjoy ourselves, or we're not going to have a fun time. But we'll see. And again, it wasn't bad. I thought the reviews were a little too harsh. I didn't really necessarily see the generic superhero stuff. I did see the generic villain stuff, again, giving the villain a supernatural power just like our hero. But like, I didn't think it was a bad movie at all. I've kind of worded it like this: like, would I pay the money to see it again? Probably not. I liked what I saw, and there we go. On my letterbox, I gave it 3 stars. Because it was fine. It was a fine movie. I don't think there should be a sequel, but as we all know, the state of Hollywood, everything is pretty much sequels now. But if I had to give it a rating, like my personal rating out of 10, I would probably give it a 5, right down the middle, an even 5. There are aspects about the movie that are great. Well, I wouldn't say great, but there are aspects about the movie I liked. There are aspects about the movie I didn't like. Compared to the 94 version, the 94 version is actually the superior film and also the more faithful adaptation. Because they kept a lot of the same things the same. Characters, names, and things like that. So if you want to go see it, I'm not going to stop you. I'm not going to tell you, no, don't waste your money. If this review makes you unsure, then maybe wait till it's out on VOD and then check it out. Don't pirate it. We don't support pirating here. But yeah, so that's my review of the 2024 The Crow. If you liked it, let us know. I didn't want to keep this video too long. I wanted to get to the point, mainly because, as I've mentioned in the past, I have a hard time talking on my own, especially on a podcast format. I work better bouncing off of someone and joking with someone. So I think that's when Jeremy and I do our best work. But if you did enjoy this, let us know. Maybe when Jeremy comes back, maybe he might do a solo episode and review a movie or something like that. If you didn't like it, okay, cool. This will be a one-off situation. When Jeremy comes back, it'll be business as usual. But if you did, great, awesome. Let us know. Next week, I will be by myself again. Next week, I might maybe make the video format a little bit longer. And I might talk about physical media then. That way I can kind of get my thoughts straight and maybe get Jeremy's a little opinion on it. But I don't know. Again, kind of making this up as I go along. But yeah, well, everyone, I hope you enjoyed this review of The Crow. Again, Jeremy should be back in about 2 weeks, and we will be back to business as usual. Thank you so much for listening, and have a good night.